folks. You are tuned into the Failing Frequency. I am Ethan.
And I've been told to tell you that I am not Mike. Although I'm not entirely sure I'm not Mike. I might be Mike?
We're all Mike in our own way. But no, Mike's not with us right now because we're not talking Star Trek today.
We might get around.
I mean, we'll probably talk about Star Trek at some point because that's just the kind of people that we are. No, today on this very special inaugural Failing Frequency Supplemental, we will be discussing the seminal science fiction masterpiece that is Dune and the upcoming sequel to Denis Villeneuve's Dune, Dune Part 2. And joining me is Andy over from the Great Derelict. How are you feeling being away from that giant derelict space station?
Oh, I'm in the derelict still. It's why it's so echoey and kind of echoey in here. There's nothing here. It's a wreck. It's a state.
Oh,
I'm coming to you from one of the larger voids. I think this used to hold possibly a TARDIS. I don't know, but I'm here to speak to you today.
sweet. Right. Let's get into it. Oh, actually, no, before we get into it, I usually ask Mike, and I suppose we'll do the same thing for you. How are you doing?
Yeah, all right. I've been exhausted. I've been traveling, and I got back about a week ago, and my body clock has still not reset to UK time. So I is exhausted, like all the time. It might be getting old, but I choose to believe it's jet lag.
Fair enough, man. Where did you go?
I went to Japan. I was in Japan for 10 days.
Sweet. You were saying in the green room you saw a giant robot.
I saw a giant robot, a moving giant robot. I saw Godzilla. I saw two Godzillas. What's the plural of Godzilla?
Godzilla.
Godzilla Pody? I don't know. Yes, I saw so many wondrous things in Japan. Highly recommend it. If you ever get the chance to go, you definitely go to Japan.
Sweet. Yeah, I mean, I've always wanted to. Did you eat lots of sweets that were absolutely filled with all kinds of different food colorings and shit?
Not so much of the sweets, but I did eat a lot of very, very good food. Some of which I have no idea what it was. Plus, I did bring back some pocky, as is tradition when one goes to Japan. Very autistic-friendly food is pocky.
It certainly is. It certainly is. Right. Let's get into it. Let's talk Dune.
What did you?
First question, is it Dune? Well, that's actually going to be my first question. How do you pronounce it, Andy?
I pronounce it as Dune.
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 I try to
I did carry it. Dune.
Dude, I try to lean towards the way that I heard Javier Bardem pronounce it. Dune.
To be fair, though, I have been reading and following the world of Dune since long before Javier Bardem donned the still suit.
Well, that was actually going to be my next thing. So, what's your experience with Dune, with the franchise, with the movies, with the books?
Computer guy.
Pardon?
And a computer guy.
Well, you might know more about that than me. So, what's your relationship with Dune?
Okay, so as a child of the 80s, growing up then, I was kind of tangentially exposed to Alan Smithy, a.k.a. David Lynch's 1984 film, Dune, which is a bit of a trip. It's definitely a mood piece. I think that's safe to say. It kind of that came out in 1984, and, I think my dad had a VHS copy, and it was something that, it would be on. I was tangentially aware, but I didn't really know what it was. I just knew it was trippy and weird. But as someone who loves Star Wars, it was still science fiction, so I kind of put that on at the same time. The first time I kind of became really aware of Dune as something I was interested in was a computer game. It was Dune 2, which was a real-time strategy game. Now, again, you might be too young to remember this. Do you know of a game called Command and Conquer?
Yes. Okay. My mother used to fucking love Command and Conquer.
Oh, making me feel so old. Anyway, I also used to love Command and Conquer, but Command and Conquer was in effect a reskin of a game called Dune 2, also made by Westworld. And in there you had to harvest resources, a spice, if you will, send it to processors and build up your armies and all that fun stuff. And so that was like the early 90s, was playing a lot of that, which was great. And that kind of got me interested in Dune initially. And then around 2000, the Sci-Fi Channel did a couple of miniseries. They did two. They did Dune, the miniseries, a 3-part miniseries, starring Alec Newman as Muad'Dib, as I recall, and William Hurt as Duke Leto. And then they did a sequel called Children of Dune, which was actually an adaptation of the second and third books in the Dune pantheon, Dune Messiah, and Children of Dune. And so, yes, I've loved Dune ever since then. The music, especially from Children of Dune, has always been a big part of mine. And then when I saw that Denis Villeneuve, one of my all-time favorite directors, who made the impossible. He made a sequel to Blade Runner. Makes a Blade Runner, and when I heard he was going to be Dune, I was just like, shut up and take my money. And
hell yeah,
now we're here. Now we're here.
Yeah, yeah, we certainly are. That Command and Conquer was a reskin of Dune.
Well, it's not a reskin, but basically Westwood did. It was Dune 2. I never played the first one, but Dune 2 was a very successful real-time strategy game, and a lot of what's in Command and Conquer was basically taken from Dune, and that carries over. So even a lot of the animations are kind of lifted wholesale from Dune 2, the Westworld game. So if you can find it on a Good Old Games or something, it's well worth checking out.
Is it set during the in the films? Like, are you, because like you're a general when you're playing Command and Conquer. So like, are you Muad'Dib?
I think you're one of the houses, so you're either playing as representative of House Atreides or House Carina or Harkonnen, and there was another one which I can't remember. And yeah, you're basically just trying to control Dune, because as we know,
Atreides,
the spice, was the universe.
Cool. I want to talk about my journey with Dune. It is a long and arduous journey of trying to decode the film without reading the book, the original film. So I grew up having not so much watched it. I was born in 1990, and like the film would just be on in the background. My dad thought it was great. My mum thought it was stupid.
They're both
100% right. And throughout the years, I tried to read Dune so many times, but as a person who lives with ADHD, I struggle to read in general. Not because I can't decode the squiggles, but because I was thinking about something else. Started reading it, thinking about something else, and for a lot of people, the first Dune book is somewhat incomprehensible, because Frank Herbert does not hold your hand at all throughout that story. You just kind of get dropped into the kind of this space neo-feudalism, and there is contextual language being used that is not explained, and you just kind of have to figure it out as you go. And so I couldn't do it. Then I listened to the audiobooks, and I managed to read the first few Dune books in the time it takes for them to be read out loud after years and years of trying.
When you said you did the audiobooks, so just for my own interest, are we talking just Dune? Are we talking the entire saga? Are we talking the entire saga? How much?
How much Dune have I consumed? Most of it, including, and this is we're gonna try and talk about Brian Herbert's books as little as possible, because
good, because I haven't read any of them. So
fuck off, Brian. No one cares. They're not good. I did accidentally skip one of Brian Herbert's Dune books and didn't realize until part of the way through the book after it, but that's fine, because most of the first half of the final book in Brian Herbert's Dune series is just exposition of the book that he just wrote. So my recommendation, if anyone decides to tackle Brian Herbert's Dune sequels, is skip the second to last one, because he'll fill you in. Yeah, trash. Fuck off, Brian. No one gives a shit.
Okay.
My favorite book is God, Emperor of Dune. It's fucking
that's
awesome.
a tricky one, that is.
Oh, I fucking love it. I always describe it to people as like if we take the story of Muad'Dib, if we compare Dune to something like Star Wars, which obviously lifts heavily from lots of Dune in there.
I can't imagine what you're talking about. This science fiction series set predominantly on a desert planet, involving a young boy who comes to terms with his near messianic status. I don't know what you mean.
Oh no. If we compare Dune to Star Wars, you've got Muad'Dib, and I kind of compare him to Anakin Skywalker. He's being bolstered up as the Messiah,
and then claims of a population,
going fucking nuts and becoming a dark overlord. Then he has, a couple of twins. One of them becomes a new Messiah. Imagine if The Force Awakens, it was about Luke Skywalker becoming the Emperor and Jabba the Hutt.
What? I mean, you don't have to imagine it. You could just read it.
You just read it, you picture it, you could cut Luke Skywalker's face on a picture and just stick it on Jabba the Hutt. Do a face swap on
My nail.
get a my nail, you chupa.
My nail. Fetch me another Duncan. Kill it like the rest.
Man, you could fit so many Duncans in this bad boy. And you mentioned Dune. Do you think Dune's the best book? To be fair, it is a fucking epic.
It inspired. I mean, it's inspired.
It inspired the rest of Dune. It inspired Star Wars. It inspired all kinds of shit. So let's talk about that first. Let's talk about that first book, Dune.
Okay.
Let's talk about the backdrop of Dune. The setting. I'm not talking about the setting of the story itself. Let's talk about the real world setting of Dune. Brian, let's talk about Frank Herbert.
I was going to say Frank.
Let's talk about Brian Herbert's dad.
Yeah.
Frank Herbert and kind of the stuff that he was seeing in the world and what made him want to write Dune now.
So, as I understand it, Herbert was a reporter, and he was doing a report on the dunes in Oregon, in northwest of the US, and it was just talking about how these things, they kind of move and evolved, and the ecosystems that were kind of growing up around those. Because when you think of someone like Oregon, you don't necessarily think of deserts and dunes and things like that. So that kind of got him a bit interested on that side of things. But then I think along with the politics of the day, and this is the 1950s, it's the kind of communist scare stuff. It's all of the things that we have coming out of the second half of the back half of World War II. And I think he wanted to tell a story about charismatic leaders. That's how I've always seen it described. It's about it's a warning about charismatic leaders. So he kind of started working on it in the late 50s, and he couldn't get it picked up. No one would touch this thing because it's a science fiction book about deserts in space of thousands of year old empires. Whereas if you look at the other science fiction books you were kind of getting at the time, you're kind of still looking at your Forbidden Planet, your Flash Gordons, your Buck Rogers. So it was massively different from anything else. But I think someone picked it up. It was like the guy who does Haynes manuals, but the US version of Haynes manuals kind of decided to take a chance on it, gave him some money, it became an absolute bestseller. So yeah.
That theme of, the follies of fully going in on charismatic leaders, I think is definitely the thing that really pulled me into the Dune series. This, because I don't trust the system. You can't trust the system, man. It's definitely, I think, the what I'm hoping to see a lot more of in Dune Part 2 than we saw in David Lynch's Dune. Yeah, this idea that you have this character who's being sort of massaged as a messiah figure, kind of enticing people in, and then surprise, they turn into a complete and utter tyrant.
Yeah.
I think it's, I find it very compelling. This idea of smashing a system of control, but the mechanism of doing that, the mechanism of revolution kind of being a system of control in and of itself is definitely, I love that shit. Big ecology vibes as well.
And given the time this is being written as well, the 50s and 60s, decades ahead of his time.
Totally. I've often heard Frank Herbert described as an old school conservative in many ways, but not in the term that we would use conservative today.
Yeah.
Less so much like back to old fashioned values as it is about back to basics,
Well, I think I was going to say, speaking of that, I think when you look at the setting of Dune, where it is, it's a future with a huge past. It is effectively a future where there are thousands of years of tradition and history to the point where things are spoken of as myth. We keep hearing references to things like the Butlerian Jihad. There's an emperor who sends out decrees. There's ancient houses. It's a very feudal world, which speaks to us of something with decades and centuries of tradition. And that kind of feeds into this idea of conservatism, where it's very much, conservatism, in my mind, is very much the kind of the race to the status quo. It's to keep shit the same because it's comfortable, is what you know. And at the beginning of Dune, it's very much, that is where they are. They are maintaining this status quo and this tradition. The Emperor is pitting the houses against one another for his own benefit. And, ironically, you can see with the Harkonnens, they're the ones that kind of instigate a lot of this change by being dicks and trying to undo it. But they're doing it in a way that is, it's traditional. It's the Red Wedding, isn't it, effectively? You invite the people over, have a nice party, and then you kill every motherfucker. And that's what the Harkonnens are trying to do there. And it's only by dint of Paul's mother, Lady Jessica, defying tradition, defying the Bene Gesserit order, that it leads to the inciting incident, which results in, billions and billions of deaths.
Yeah, pitting people against each other with the aim of maintaining the status quo. Could you imagine something so outlandish as happening? Could you imagine? Oh, the system. So along with themes of power and ecology, you had an episode of the Great Derelict podcast. You had an episode a little while ago discussing religion in Star Trek.
Oh, the religion one, yeah.
Yeah,
well, it wasn't Star Trek, it was religion in science fiction, I think that one was.
Yeah, religious control over the masses is also a massive theme in Dune. What are your thoughts on religious control, the control of behavior and information and thought that religious institutions have over the masses?
Well, I mean,
what Dune has to say about it.
If we're talking specifically in Dune, because, I mean, as far as questions go with wide remits, that's quite a big one.
Yeah.
I'm not really qualified to do that, but I'll talk a little bit about it in Dune. In a recurring theme, certainly in all of the Frank Herbert books, it is the use of religion to control and to subvert the populace. In Dune itself, the idea that Muad'Dib is a messiah, and I don't know if everyone picks up on this if you watch the film. I don't know how. I saw it because I've read the books, but I don't know how prevalent it is if you haven't done that. But basically, the Bene Gesserit order in decades and eons past have basically seeded the beginnings of religious myths on every planet, on every world. Expressly so, if ever a member of the Bene Gesserit order finds themselves struck or in trouble on this planet, they can tap into this mythology and be able to get help and support from the local populace. So they basically started weaving this idea of a savior who would come, who would lead the Fremen against the oppressors and, bring about revolution and jihad. It was all very vague, and it was in such a way that, if you knew what the stories were, you could come in and just effectively just say, oh, I'm this person here, and this is this person here. And it proves that I am the chosen one. And after the Harkonnens kind of banished Jessica and Paul out into the desert, their only way to survive is to connect with the Fremen. I mean, they were already trying to do that to raise the Fremen to fight the Emperor, but that's there. They tap into this. But what Paul realizes that Jessica perhaps doesn't is Paul realizes that once you start this ball rolling, once you start them on this path, it will become a thing on its own. You will lose control of it. You can't control it once you start it. And, even by then, once you realize that you started it, it's kind of too late. It's kind of taken a while of itself. So that's in Dune. When we get into Dune Messiah, it's largely about Paul trying to come to terms with the fact that he has put himself on a pedestal and become this Messiah in which atrocities, massacres, and holocausts are being carried out in his name, but he doesn't know how to stop it. He can't find a way to prevent it. And in the end, the way he does it is to effectively walk away. He goes into the desert. He kind of says, fuck all this noise, I'm out, mic drop. Then when we get into Children of Dune and then God Emperor of Dune, you have Leto II, who is blessed or cursed with prescience. He kind of knows, he knows a future to a point. And he can see many futures, but he has picked a path that he thinks is the best for humanity to continue to exist, and basically uses religion through his fish speakers. And, he kind of he adapts the religion of his father and kind of morphs it and molds it to drive people to a point, and then leads them down what he describes as the golden path. Then you get to Heretics and Chapter House, and then it just gets weird, and I'm just not even going to attempt to kind of...
Well, I mean, that's what happened. That's what happened in real life.
Yeah.
Like, religious institutions have gone very weird, especially now. If you compare religion religious institutions as represented in Dune to religious institutions in real life, I think it's a pretty spot on analogy. Shit gets fucking weird in those books, especially. Shit's pretty fucking weird now.
But the last time I checked, we weren't all worshipping a massive giant sandworm hybrid with a collection of dead golas.
I mean, if we were, we would have the dead golas as evidence. Fucking love anything that sticks its finger up at institutions, man. And it's the thing that I love about Dune. The thing I love about science fiction in general. Good science fiction, you know, in my mind, is supposed to hold a mirror up to society and ask, you know, is this you? Are we cool with this? Is this what we're doing? Is this what we're doing? Are we cool with this? All right. If you're cool with it, then I guess I'm here too. That being said, how well do you think those themes were kind of represented in Denis Villeneuve's Dune Part 1?
Denis Villeneuve's Dune Part 1. I mean, it's very hard to really judge Dune Part 1 against Dune the story because it's only half of the story. It sets a lot of the stuff up really, really well. And, you know, I love the bit when Paul meets the Reverend Mother, the use of voice and the way that was kind of implemented. I love the visuals in the sim. You know, when the guy shows up, the Herald of the Change. I love that. I mean, that's not in the book, but I thought that was a really nice kind of way to kind of get that exposition across, and you know, kind of feeds further into this sense. I think Denis Villeneuve's adaptation is the best to date, both visually and narratively, that we've seen. But it is only half of it. You know, you have to ask me in November once we've seen Part 2 if it sticks for landing, because I could tell you after the experience of, say, watching the Star Wars sequels, you know, I think how it ends will inform your appreciation of how it starts.
Yeah, absolutely.
That being said, it's Denis Villeneuve who has yet to steer me wrong, and yeah, all the pieces of the trailer looks as spectacular as the first one did. So I have very high hopes.
Yes, my thoughts on the first Dune film, especially in terms of, I mean, like, it was beautiful, spectacular.
That music. I got to see that being played live at the O2 Arena in
Verangle.
Hans Zimmer does his live shows, and in one of most recently, they do a lot of the Dune music in there, including the Atreides march with the bagpipes and everything, and it was...
Oh, that was cool. It was cool. I love that one. Like, just in the theater, just like, are those bagpipes? Those are bagpipes.
Fuck yeah.
Sweet. Cool. Yeah, the, you know, obviously, all of that was epic. I was hoping for, I don't know, less subtext, more text. What's the Garth Marenghi? Subtext is for cowards. You know, it's... And like, I agree with you. I think judging Dune Part 1 on its own, it might be unfair. You know, when Dune Part 2, and we can you know, hold it all up, see it all together, we'll see how things set up in that first film sort of pay off. And I mean, we know how it's going to end, but I mean, and I'm sure they'll stick the landing. The ending of the David Lynch film, it ends very heroically.
Which version?
Yeah, well, we could get into that, but like, talking about like the Paul Atreides, you know, he declares himself emperor. There's a big musical finish. The rains come down. They're all dead, by the way, because of that. You know, it ends it on a big heroic finish, but that's not necessarily how it's supposed to end. And you know, I worry that the Hollywood of it all might come into play too much, and I really hope that they outline strictly Paul is the villain. Paul is the villain.
Paul is not the villain at the end of Dune. Paul becomes the villain in Messiah.
Yeah,
and I think that's you see, that's what I think on the end. I think they will tweak things on Dune Part 2 a little bit, because they've already said what's his name? Abs for days. Jason Momoa is in Dune Part 2. Now, he shouldn't be in it unless it's some sort of flashback sequence. But if he is, maybe they're bringing forward the Golas and a sense of some of that into Part 2. I don't know. It wouldn't surprise me, though, if they maybe set some things up for Messiah a bit earlier, because when Frank Herbert wrote Dune originally, he didn't have Messiah ready to go. It wasn't like he wasn't planning to do it straight away. It was something which kind of came naturally out of it. So I imagine I think it will probably end like the sci-fi miniseries does. I think it will end with Paul facing down Fade, killing him, the Navigators and the Bene Gesserit deposing the Emperor and declaring Paul as the new Emperor. And I think that is kind of where it will come to an end. I think if they then decide to go off to do Messiah, that's when you will see it. And I think if they were to do that, they once again, looking at the sci-fi series and how they portrayed it, I think they will probably show Paul as less of a villain and more as a victim of circumstance. Just because I think it would be quite a tonal shift to go from that to that. Not that they shouldn't.
The sci-fi series did kind of tone that down a fair bit. That I'm reminded of a line like right at the start of the adaptation of Messiah, where Paul is saying to someone like something like the power doesn't lie with the rulers, power lies with the people. And I'm thinking to myself like that's I don't think that's from the book. I'm fairly certain if that was a line from the book, it would be like, power lies where the people think it does because they're stupid, and if we make them think that they have the power, then we will actually have the power because people are stupid. But they needed Paul to be a good guy in that. And a good guy, who knows Krav Maga? That was in the early 2000s, Krav Maga. Remember that?
It was very popular. Also, the costume designs. The costume designs in that are an absolute choice.
they absolutely are. It's like all the best and worst Babylon 5, but like let's run it through a fucking Jerry Anderson machine. Let's turn everything inside out and stick it on people's heads.
Yeah.
Outstanding. I love it. You just mentioned some stuff about like maybe doing a cheeky little bit of Dune Messiah, just a cheeky little Dune Messiah cherry on the top of Dune Part 2.
It's the shot.
As he said that, something just like clicked in my head. Let's talk about the trailer.
Okay.
The trailer for Dune Part 2 features quite a lot of Florence Pugh as Princess Irulan. A lot more than she's actually like really in the narrative of Dune. But like obviously Dune has, in between all the chapters, it has like excerpts from the life and times of Muad'Dib and
Life of Muad'Dib by Princess Irulan, yes.
Exactly. And like, it was a big moment for me when I was listening to the Dune audiobook, when it gets to like the second to last chapter or something, and the excerpt that goes in between the chapters expressly refers to Muad'Dib as a tyrant, as a fascist galactic despot.
Those bits are interesting, both in Dune, but also throughout, because later on, when you get to God Emperor of Dune, the interludes in between that are archaeological readings of Leto's diaries from like thousands of years later. And I like the fact that it's framing a lot of what we're reading as the present through the lens of history and how things have been kind of decoded and kind of extrapolated it. I mean, as far as the Princess Irulan goes, though, I think they'll probably do what they did in the 2000 series, where they expanded her role quite a bit, and they gave her a lot more agency because she's presented as someone who effectively uncovers the Emperor's and the Harkonnens' conspiracy to depose the Atreides, because the Emperor is very much complicit in that. So I think that's perhaps what they're going to do. I mean, again, you're not going to cast Florence Pugh just to have her show up at the very end and say, "Oh, no. Okay, I'll marry him."
Yeah, and I mean, they would kind of have to, otherwise this sucker has absolutely no chance whatsoever of passing the Bechdel test if they don't. Yeah, definitely kind of got to give her some work. But I'm wondering if maybe we'll get like a stinger at the end. Have that excerpt from the Paul Muad'Dib was a bad bloke.
I don't think you're gonna get anything of that in this film.
No, cowards.
It's not in the first.
Cowards.
It's not.
It's in that little bit in between the chapters, and I feel like
it's it's hinted at there.
It's hinted at, like you say, Herbert worked on the first Dune book for a long time, and it shows, because that thing's a fucking cinder block of a book, and everyone loved it. Everyone thought it's such a wonderful, wonderful exploration of the hero's journey. Joseph Campbell loved Dune.
Joseph so much, he thought, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to put laser swords in there.
Do you just have that ready to go? But yeah, so Joseph Campbell fucking loved Dune. He was like, it's a wonderful example of the stuff I've been talking about for years, about the mythic structure of the hero's journey. And I feel like in a lot of ways he kind of felt compelled to go further and really kind of spell things out with Dune Messiah, and Joseph Campbell actually hated Dune Messiah. He's like, you ruined it. You were on the very verge of greatness. We were man. You were supposed to destroy the Sith, not become one. Like, Joseph Campbell thought, like, Dune Messiah just kind of smashed everything that Herbert said in subtext throughout Dune. He kind of goes, right, I don't think people are quite getting it. I'm gonna begin, make it text in Dune Messiah and fill this character with regret over having tricked everyone, both in the book and in the real world. I was thinking about Dune most of the time.
It seems like that's a recurring thing for you.
But I've just recently listened to John Carter of Mars, and like there is this, Dune it's a white savior story.
Yeah.
Very much along the lines of John Carter of Mars, Avatar, Dances with Wolves. But I also think that like it's also a critique of the white savior story.
There's a lot of, I mean, I did an episode on Dune on the Derelict a while back. And we did touch upon a lot of that. There's a lot of colonialism and white savioring going on there because, Paul Atreides is very much your European noble who is taken to this savage land with primitive peoples and shows them, the way of the world and how to win and leads them to it. But I think with Dune, certainly in the wider context, when you get into Messiah, it's not presented as a good thing. It is shown as being exploitive. It is shown, I mean, even in Dune itself, they're quite upfront with it. That he's doing it in an exploitative way. So I don't think it's really white saviorism in the sense of the author is saying, "Oh, look, this is the white man coming to save them all." I think he is very much saying that they are taking advantage and abusing that position.
Yeah, and he is pissed off about it. He's pissed off about it throughout the whole story. It's one of my favorite scenes in the first Dune film when he's starting to he's breathing in the spice. He's starting to get a bit of a reaction. His prescience is starting to emerge, and he's starting to see all the sort of tendrils that reach out and kind of reach towards him. He's pissed off about it. He's angry. Why are you making me do this?
Yeah.
And yeah, it's very much this kind of like, well, because you have to. Because if you don't, everyone you love is going to die and your father won't be avenged. But if you do, billions of people will die. But you have to.
I think
because that's what the story needs.
I think it is interesting, though, in that while it starts off with Paul and Jessica just trying to survive, they just want the Fremen to take them off-world, to once he realizes and discovers that his father's been killed with the Emperor's blessing, it then becomes vengeance. Paul very much goes from, we just need to do this, we just need to survive, to, I will end you all. He literally threatens to bring down their civilization. He says, you will bow down before me or I will destroy the spice.
Yeah.
And the spice must flow.
Yeah. It's a total fucking badass move where it's like, I'm gonna bring down our entire fucking galactic empire and I'm gonna do it from my back garden.
Yeah.
I'm gonna do it from my house.
Well, he doesn't care though. He's very much like, I'm the king of this world and I'll still be the king of this world if we do this and destroy it, but you guys. And also, let's be clear, they don't want to give up their positions of privilege and power. That's why the guild the Navigators, the Bene Gesserit, all basically going to be Emperor. Yeah, you're fucked. It's, it's the bus is the way of all tyrants. Eventually someone else comes along who can guarantee the stuff you want better than the other one does, and then all of a sudden you're out on your ear.
Yeah, we've been getting quite deep. We've been getting deep. It's Dune. But let's get superficial. I'm gonna put some stills from the trailer up. We've got lovely fade. Right. So
No.
we've talked about Florence Pugh as the Princess Irulan.
Yeah.
What's this fucking cat's name? What's the cat who played Elvis?
Oh, I know who you mean. I don't know what his name is, but yeah.
We've got Elvis Presley as bald fade Ralpha. How does that make you feel? First of all, those shots in the trailer are fucking gorgeous. The black and white. Let me just.
What Denis Villenueve did is he really managed to kind of create such a visual style for every house. When you look at the Harkonnens, instantly you can tell that they're Harkonnens. Instantly you could see the Atreides. When you got to the Sardaukar as well, on Seleucus Secundus as well, I mean, all of that, and the sound design as well, with the throat singing monk and all those people bloodletting, and it's just a visual feast to take in there. And I mean, and that's the one thing I kind of took away from the trailer when I was watching that as well. It's just when you see the little glimpses of like Jessica in the Reverend Mother garb from the Fremen. There, I mean, I love the costume design in the first one, but I'm even more excited about it going into the next one. The only thing I'm not sold on, and I don't see it in the trailer, but it was in the vision scene in the first one, is when you see him has a vision of the future and he kind of rocks out in what looks like a Power Ranger still suit. I'm kind of hoping that will be not what we see in the final.
I feel like, so with Paul's powers. The way I always describe how prescience works is it's super Sherlock Holmes vision, because he's got the mentat training, he's got the training of the computer brain, and he's got the mind expanding qualities of the spice.
All the Kwisatz Haderach.
Yeah, all of his visions of the future. It's just the result of intense computation going on in his brain, and it's just like logical sort of. He's very accurately predicting the logical outcome of everything that he knows about the galaxy and about his situation and about the people involved. And that's why you do see his visions kind of changing throughout the film as more information kind of goes in. So I do think that vision of the battle, where he's wearing a Power Ranger suit, is maybe more informed by what he thinks going into battle might look like, because all his people at the time wear Power Ranger suits.
Yeah.
So you have.
I think you see one of the things you do get in the book though is he starts chasing the visions. Paul starts deliberately taking more and more spice because he becomes more and more dependent on them, and they go from these glimpses that are potentially warnings, but they give him some advantage, to the point where he becomes dependent upon them. And especially after his son is killed. Was the first kid called Leto? I think it was.
It was also called Leto. Leto 2. Yeah, so, Leto 2.1.
I was going to say 2.0 and 2.1. Or
yeah.
But anyway, after that, he kind of throws himself into that. And then you also get with Jessica as well, when she kind of takes it in, and we get the whole, Aaliyah. Oh, that's going to be a fun one to see how they're going to depict that on there.
Oh, I'm so excited about Aaliyah. I really hope they show her like fucking stabbing people. If they're not cowards, they'll do it. And you mentioned Jessica. We have some shots of Jessica as full-on Reverend Mother.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely looking forward to seeing the spice agony, to potentially the spiceology. The one thing that I thought the first Dune film was lacking in was being visually very weird. Like I feel like Dune needs to be a lot more trippy visually. It needs to be a lot more weird shit visually going on. Not quite full Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, but I don't
know if I agree with that. I think the first one does have the. Okay, so I think we need to qualify, because obviously you've got the David Lynch film, which it has a reputation, and I think a lot of that reputation is down to the visual style and the visual choices which are done throughout there. Then you've also had quite recently, really coming back into the public zeitgeist, is the pre-production work that was done for Jodorowsky's Dune film. And there's a fantastic documentary called Jodorowsky's Dune, where they basically go into that. And I mean, you want to talk your batshit insane sort of visions of a film, that's kind of where it all starts. And I think what Denis Villeneuve did is he managed to kind of imprint a lot of that pathos and that otherworldliness in there without resorting to going to those extremes. I mean, things like the Harkonnens, you can tell they're kind of really gross and disgusting and horrible without having all the boils and shit that you get in the David Lynch one.
Yeah, they're vile. They're taking baths. Yeah, we did have a Spider Woman. I suppose that kind of makes up for not milking cats. Kind of. Yeah, I don't know. I like weird stuff. I like things to be unsettling. We did get a scene with, when they're in the tent and he's getting spiced up. He's becoming a spicy boy. I'm not so much looking for, like I say, like fractal imagery as I am looking for some more cinematographic flourishes. There was one shot in the film where it looks like it was filmed on like a video camera, a VHS camera. Man, it's hard to say. They're in the desert.
Okay.
They're in the desert. You start seeing stuff, and there is a shot of the fight that he will have, and it looks like it's filmed from very far away, zoomed in on a VHS camera, and I was like, I loved that shot so much, and it lasted for like 2 seconds. I want more of that. There was a cool shot with Jessica where you see her with tattoos on her face and stuff.
Yeah, I know. Yeah,
as a vision, like I want some more kind of like, I'm thinking like disjointed imagery. Basically, I'm really looking forward to the spice agony, to the water of life scenes. I'm really looking forward to seeing some cool.
I mean, it sounds like you just want to go and pop some acid and just go and watch.
I haven't done any drugs in a really long time. Like, I'm so domesticated now. It's like,
not even any spice.
No, I haven't done any spice. Like, it's nah. Let's look at some more stuff in the trailer. So we see the kind of what you'd say, what's the word, not an induction, a rite of passage in a way. We see Paul attempt to ride a sandworm.
Initiation. Yes,
initiation, that's the word I'm looking for. Induction,
so that's not another big one.
Yeah.
Europeanism.
So I don't know if you can remember having seen the trailer on the plane. So it looks as though Paul does not have the eyes of a bard in those scenes. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm fairly certain when he rides a sandworm, he's already like done spice a bunch. He already has blue within blue eyes.
If I remember correctly, and I might be conflating the book with other adaptations, but he only gets the eyes after he takes the water of life to give him the visions, which is after that.
Okay.
Yeah, I think he doesn't get the blue eyes until then, because Jessica doesn't get them until she takes the water of life as well. It takes years to get the blue eyes of constantly eating spice, unless you ingest the water of life in effect, because Raban was on Dune for years. He never got blue eyes. I think it's the taking the water of life which does it for them anyway. I mean, again, in the book / the other adaptations, him riding the sandworm is kind of like the last step before he is fully accepted into the tribe as a legit Fremen. And he put it off a long time, because at that point it was expected that he would then go and fight Stilgar for leadership of the Sietch. And he doesn't want to do that because he doesn't want to kill Stilgar. And, he basically says, would you have me cut off my right arm right before battle? We're not going to do that. And that's when he declares himself, he's not the, I can't remember what the name is for the leader of the Sietch, but he calls himself their duke, and he kind of holds up the ducal signet and takes ownership of House Atreides. But I mean, the other thing you've got to remember is trailers lie all the fucking time, and he might well have blue eyes by this point, and they just haven't shown that effect. But
we do see him with the eyes of Ibad, though, in that last shot when we see him kind of squaring up to fade Ralph. Who do you think will win?
I tell you what, it'd be a fucking shock if Fade wins.
Look at it, I'll tell you what, they're cowards. They'll never do it. We see a pretty cool shot of Paul sort of rallying his Fedaykin. It's a Fugazi.
I think that's the moment where he basically says, "I'm not just I'm your duke." I think that is the moment after he comes back from riding the worm, and declares himself as their duke.
Mm-hmm. And that shot is kind of spliced in with shots of him having a Barney with his mom. We've all been there, saying, she's telling him to give the people hope, and he's saying that's not hope. Presumably, again, sort of fighting back at this kind of thing that she's kind of forced him into. Presumably it was something like, that's not hope. That's just more systems of control, man. You're turning me into the man.
You're turning me into the genocide, and he sees it coming. He knows what it will become, and she doesn't have a prescient, so she doesn't necessarily know. Oh, we see some Gurney in the trailer, which is good. Good old Gurney.
Yeah, man. Yeah, it does look good. The scale. I'm wondering if we're gonna be treated to a nice, big Denis Villenueve, big scale, sweeping shot of shitloads of stuff happening. It does scale very well. Like when you see big things in a Denis Villeneuve movie, they look very big.
They do. The Arrival is the obvious one to point towards that.
Absolutely. Like it's easy for a film, that uses a lot of special effects for a big thing to not quite look real. It's a rare treat when a film can do scale well. What else do we? I mean, like for the most part, like the trailer, I don't think gives us too much. It just kind of says, this is what happened. These are the people. Florence Pugh's in it. Florence Pugh's in the movie. Everyone likes Florence Pugh on social media. We do see Baron Harkonnen. We don't see Aaliyah. My absolute favorite thing that is always left out in the Dune adaptations that we've had is in that last scene with Aaliyah and Baron Harkonnen. How do you say that?
What, Harkonnen?
Harkonnen. See, I listened to recordings of Herbert, and he said Harkonnen, and I always try to, but Harkonnen I think just kind of, I don't know.
The Baron
Harkonnen just sounds better, but apparently it's Harkonnen. Whatever. I mean, he wrote the thing. So
Low-born Fleming might refer to him as that, but it is Harkonnen.
Aaliyah, awesome, unsettling character, born with generational memory
and generational trauma.
Generational trauma. Aren't we all? There's a scene where after when she's being held by the Baron, and then the Fremen blast through. They fucking blow up the walls of the house, and they start coming in, and someone looks up and they just see Aaliyah running around stabbing people on the ground, and that's where in the later books she gets the name Aaliyah of the Knife. Again, I really hope that they have it in them, but I'm worried that Hollywood is too cowardly to show a little girl stabbing a bunch.
I imagine if the studios had their way, it would have just been a single film, one part. I think Denis Villenueve was given a lot of latitude with this to make the film you want. And
true.
Let's be fair. His films are not the most financially successful. They're not the blockbusters that. These are very much prestige films for the studios. They're making these because they want the award buzz. They want people to look at those and to go, oh yes, that's a wonderful work of art, isn't it? That's a fantastic movie.
Maybe if they want a film, if they want to produce a film and not a movie, maybe they will have an infant stabbing a bunch of people. That's the kind of thing that films get prestige for.
No, but I mean, straight up, I think they probably will, because I think that is, I think Denis Villeneuve will probably want to include that, but I think it's something, when you have the more prestige films, they like to show actors, certainly, younger or older, kind of playing against types and doing things. So I think you'll see that, because it'll be a shocking moment. And then you get, I mean, the only version which can really comes to mind right now isn't exactly high art, but in Kick-Ass, when you had Hit Girl going around calling everyone, see you next Tuesday. And
you can say it. You can say it.
Okay,
Golden Field.
yeah. I think it's things like that. It generates a bit of buzz, and I imagine that you will see it.
Oh, good. That fills me with hope. That fills me with hope. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Do you think the world is ready for a God Emperor of Dune movie?
Oh no. Okay, so I think if Denis Villeneuve wants to make Dune Messiah, I think he'll be allowed to make Dune Messiah. I don't know. I haven't heard Denis Villeneuve say he wants to do Children of Dune or God Emperor of Dune, and I don't think he necessarily would want to do those. I think Denis Villeneuve is quite interested in exploring that theme and the evolution of the innocent, kind of prince of House Atreides who witnesses, all of this, who then becomes this messianic figure and who then leads the Fremen on jihad and burns the galaxy. I think Denis Villeneuve is quite interested in telling that story. I don't think he's much interested in telling anything after that. And if Denis Villeneuve's not doing Children of Dune, I don't know how interested I am.
Fair enough. Man, we'll never see it. I'm not sure if the world's ready because, like...
When you say, do you think they're not ready for Children of Dune or for God Emperor of Dune?
I think that Hollywood is too cowardly to make God Emperor of Dune.
It would be very difficult to do because the problem with all of these films, at least from a studio sensibility, is they want to make it so that you can just pick it up at any point because they're very hesitant to make something where you've got to have watched 3 or 4 things to get to it. And God Emperor of Dune is, I think it's like 6,000 years after Dune. It's like
3,500.
But there's a bit of a gap, as I said on another podcast. There's a bit of a gap. And, the only real returning characters are a version of the God Emperor, Leto II, and so many Duncans, all of the Duncans. Duncans coming out of Wazoo. I will say this, though. Compared to the following books, Chapter House Dune and Hunters of Dune, God Emperor of Dune is a fucking masterpiece.
Yes. The series, the series, I think, if you take those first 4 Dune books, that is a closed circuit right there. That is a beginning, 2 middles, and an end.
I would counter. I would say the first 3 is a really strong trilogy. Dune, Messiah, Children of Dune. I think you can kind of have that as well. God Emperor of Dune is kind of a weird sidequel, pick up later. 3,000 years later. It's more, it's like Matrix Resurrections, basically. It's like you had the trilogy, and then someone's come back later on and said, and here's another thing that happened. And if you like it, it's great. It's awesome. If you don't like it, you could probably just go around your day pretending it never happened.
See, it's where, with God Emperor of Dune, it's where I think you kind of see the kind of fractal nature of Dune, of the...
Is it where you perhaps see a path?
Golden path, just recurring on itself, and it's where it reaches it's definitely where it reaches its most introspective. You spend the whole book, most of the book, in the head of Leto, just pondering things, just waiting for someone to kill him, and just daring them to do it. Throughout the whole book, he's saying this, all of everything that Muad'Dib did. Everything that I've done, it is all leading up to this. I'm just waiting for one of you fucking idiots to actually pull the fucking trigger. Just come on. This is what it's all been leading up to. Someone, for the love of God, please kill me. We're talking, and it is a Hollywood thing. Who are they going to have play Leto 2? Some young, beautiful...
It'll be Christian Bale, who will go method and £4,000 to play the God Emperor.
Well, no, for Children of Dune, they'll have some beautiful people. That's what they do. They get beautiful people. I feel like the studio probably is already about having beautiful people turn into Space Hitler.
Okay, so I think they could do God Emperor of Dune. I don't know if they would do it as a cinematic release and a big feature thing, but it's got a couple of things going for it. Number one, it does have name recognition. A lot of people know God Emperor of Dune, and the name is very compelling. Like, you hear God Emperor of Dune, you kind of want to know what that is. And depending on what they go with the poster and the covers, I mean, some of those, seeing that image of the hybrid Leto Sandworld thing, it's very compelling and draws you in. I think a lot of the core themes would potentially translate well, and there might well be someone who wants to do it. I think it's more likely to find a home on a prestige streaming service once they finish, fighting over themselves over who's got the rights to what have you. But just going back to what I was alluding to earlier, I think while I don't think it's likely we're going to see God Emperor of Dune, I think it's possible, but I guarantee you, never, ever, ever in a billion years will you see either Hunters or Chapter House Dune made into any kind of live action adaptation, because that shit be crazy. So
It's crazy.
It's crazy, but
It's not. It's crazy. It's not great, and it's the ending of Chapter House is so open-ended that the temptation to then adapt the Brian Herbert books.
yeah, no, I don't think you'll see any of those last ones. I think you could do it. I just don't think we're going to see it. It depends on having a director with a vision who wants to commit to make it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't know about you, but I'm quite excited for Dune 2. Dune
2? It should be coming out in June.
Oh man, I wonder how many times Tune has been uttered in reference. We've both got better things to be doing than this, so we're gonna. I have nothing. So we'll bring this to a close. I'm so fucking excited, honestly. If are there any kind of tangential Dune-related things that you would recommend for people to check out? I just want to definitely. There is a podcast series. The last podcast on the left do occasional series called the LPN Deep Dives. If anyone wants a crash course to catch themselves up with all of Frank Herbert's Dune books, definitely check out the LPN Deep Dives on the Dune series. They're very funny. Definitely check out how long ago did you do your episode on Dune?
It was during the pandemic, so it was quite a while. I think it was when the first trailer for the Denis Villenueve one dropped, because we were excited about that. So that was quite a while ago. That there's a YouTube series, I think it was called, Alt-Shift-X, a series of essay videos on Dune, including comparisons between the books and the movies. There's also a channel called Quinn's Ideas, who does really deep dives into Dune lore, and it goes way beyond and even further than I've ever touched upon, because, as I said, I've done the Frank Herbert books. By the time I got to the end of when I read Chapter House, which I think is the last one, I was so kind of disillusioned. I just went and read what the official sequel is, read the synopsis, and I was like, yeah, well, I don't need to read that, and I just checked out, because Heretics and Chapter House Dune are not my favorite. I respect what he was trying to do with those. I always respect author's intent, but they're not for me. Like yourself, I'll take the first four, package it up in a little bow, and I'm kind of good with that. It's a nice one. But what I think is really interesting, and I think people should do is, and this is at you, Mike. You listening, Mike? Because you listen to your own podcast, don't you?
Mike,
yeah.
Mike, don't finish reading that fucking book. Mike hasn't finished reading Dune yet. Don't do anything until you finish reading that friggin' book.
But let me tell you why. The thing is, Dune is literally in everything. Anything science fiction since 1963 has Dune in it. And I'm not just talking Star Wars with its desert planet. It's an alien in the worn out universe, and in the design of the alien. Now, a lot of the designs that Giga came up with, he originally came up with for the Jodorowsky series. A lot of things in Terminator with Skynet come out of some of the talkings about the Butlerian Jihad and the thinking machines that you get in there. You see it in Star Trek, in the Vulcan philosophy and a lot of the Vulcan ideas. But Dune is and I think this is why, Dune is worth talking about, is it very much at the core of modern science fiction. It is very much the grandfather of the linchpin. People who say Star Wars it's like, yeah, Star Wars is watered down Dune. Dune is what is everywhere. And, through osmosis, Star Wars has kind of got into the zeitgeist. But you absolutely should do it. And yeah, the audiobook's a fantastic way to do it. If not that, then the Denis Villeneuve film is great. And if you can get by the cheesy effects, because, it was done on a TV budget, the sci-fi series is actually really good. I really like it.
It's not bad. It's not bad. It's not. It's not good, but it's not the worst thing in the world.
The way I look at it is, it's what it is it's a stage play that's been filmed. Yeah. Because it has that feeling about it, and you can see it in places where you can kind of see the curtains to really the desert hanging up in the background. But if you think of it more as a stage play than as a film, the music in it's great, the acting in it is really good as well. It is solid. So if you just want to kind of get a quick Cliff Notes version of Dune, do those. There's plenty of ways to digest it.
But if you want to go back and watch the David Lynch Dune. The best version of it that I have found is on YouTube, and it is 3 hours long, and it's the Dune Redux, the Spice Diver fan edit. Someone took all the deleted scenes they could find, cleaned them up, and edited them. Clearly a fan of David Lynch, tried to make it as David Lynchy as he could. It's the best version of Dune, in my opinion.
Well,
It's on YouTube.
You and I will disagree on that. I will say this. I will say if you're a fan of David Lynch films and that sort of thing, then absolutely check it out and watch it. But if you are on the fence about Dune, do not start with that film. It's worth going to when you're on board with Dune. Don't start with it.
Okay, yeah, maybe might be a bit overwhelming. It's 3 hours long. This version.
3 hours along to batshit David Lynchianism. So yeah,
yeah, man. So usually when we sign off on the podcast, we say "Live long and prosper, motherfuckers." And Mike says, "And peace and long life, double dumbasses." But I guess
my knife, chip and shatter.
Yeah, sort of like you do that one. I'll do the classic. Fear is the mind killer, you son of a bitch.
Okay then.
I don't know why I still do.
May my knife chip and shatter, or lightsaber, as it were.
Yeah, nice one. Thank you, everybody. See you later.